And we're going to start recording, if that's okay with everybody, just to share with future interested parties. Overall, the project has been in process for about 5 years. We've been involved with the California Natural Resources Agency in submitting this project. And we are doing, the goal is that we can share ways to benefit different communities and specifically Mexico. So our hope is that the project itself is for and by the community of Mexico, and that we can all kind of collaborate on a way to bring everybody into the communication and into the conversation, so that everybody has a say, everybody is participating, everybody has an opportunity to speak and be heard. And we are taking notes, we're keeping a record of all of the information, and that way we can share that back with the community, that we're actually making an effort to share information, but also collaborate with everybody, from government officials to the tribal members to the Ejido owners. That's our overall goal. And we're going to have a couple different presentations, but why don't we start with introductions? We'll just kind of go around the room, and everybody that would like to speak and present themselves in the meeting can talk about their organization and how they might be interested in the conversation. So I'll start with myself to introduce this event. This is the Inclusive Development of Laguna Salada Forum. And the follow-up to a presentation we had 2 years ago at the Polytechnical University of Baja California, where we brought the community and different agencies into the conversation, so that we are building a project for and by the community of Mexico. And we submitted a project to the state of California, and we'll go into that in more detail, but let's first start by introducing everybody here. We'll start with you, David.
I propose you something that we do in other meetings.
Please.
That you start up calling the people that you see, and we have an order, and not like speaking up everybody at a time.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, and we could use the raise our hand function, but we'll start with you, Mr. Tejada. Please introduce yourself, and then we'll speak with Mr. Lupe Acuna as well.
Thank you, Nathan, and thank you to Guadalupe Acuña, who invited me to join this meeting, as well as you, Nathan. My name is David Pérez Tejada. Mi nombre es David Pérez Tejada. Ya hay algunos amigos ejidatarios y gente del lado mexicano que me conocen. Fui diputado federal y actualmente soy el director de Asuntos Binacionales del Gobierno del Estado en la Secretaría de Economía e Innovación. I was a former congressman from Mexico, and in that jurisdiction, and currently I am the Binational Affairs Director for the state of Baja California, the Secretary of Economy and Innovation. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you so much for attending. I really, really do appreciate it. Mr. Guadalupe Acuna.
Sí, buenos días. Bueno, yo soy Guadalupe Acuña. Me da mucho gusto que esté aquí nuestro amigo David Pérez Tejada. Él es una persona con mucha experiencia en el área binacional, en las relaciones internacionales, y ahora responsable de este tipo de temas. Así es que bienvenidos y mucho éxito, Natal. Mucho éxito. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. And we have a couple other people. Mr. Cesar Beltran, if you'd like to introduce yourself too, if you'd like, you can. And then we can introduce some of the other team members if they'd like to speak.
Sí, ¿qué tal? Muy buenos días. Mi nombre es Cesar Beltran. Estoy teniendo problemas técnicos para ver mi pantalla, pero no sé si me pueden escuchar.
Sí, muy bien, César.
Perfecto.
Sí,
¿No
sí,
tienen,
Sí.
no sé si tienen video?
Tu cámara no funciona.
Ah, correcto. Ahorita
El audio sí.
Perfecto, ahorita lo voy a mover. Pues mi nombre, de nueva cuenta, buenos días. Mi nombre es Cesar Beltrán. Actualmente yo soy el presidente del Comisariado de Bienes Comunales la comunidad mayor indígena Cucapah en Mexicali, Baja California. Nosotros somos la comunidad Cucapah que tiene el uso y usufructo de las 143,000 hectáreas, que incluyen parte de lo que es la Sierra Cucapah y el vaso de la Laguna Salada. Y aparte, pues somos vecinos de muchos de los compañeros aquí presentes, de los distintos ejidos ubicados en esa localidad, en esa zona. Les agradezco a todos, les agradezco a Nathan por la invitación y a las distinguidas personas que acudieron a este foro. Hello, my name is Cesar Beltran. I'm currently the president of the Cucapah community in Mexicali. I represent 75 families in Mexicali, and we are the owners of 143,000 hectares in Mexicali that are composed of both the mountain, Sierra Cucapah, and the Laguna Salada plains. We are really pleased to be in this forum with you guys. Thank you, Nathan, for the invitation, and all the other persons that are actually in this forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Beltran. I really appreciate you coming and joining this conversation. And just to give everybody a little perspective, the real goal here is to ask for help. And I know that's something that we don't say very often, but our goal in this forum is to ask everybody for help. And that's hard to say, but this is a project of scale which no individual can do independent of a collaboration approach. So from our perspective, our hope is to build a project that includes and is built for the Cucapah community. And I appreciate Mr. Beltran for introducing himself. We'll go briefly to a few of our collaborators and partners here too. Andrea, if you'd like to speak, you can join now, and then we'll go to Rob and then Jimena. And then if anybody else from the community would like to introduce themselves.
Is that sideways? Sorry for the confusion, everyone. I'm a little bit mobile today. I'm Dr. Andrea Neal. I'm CEO of Bring Back the Blue, and we're a partner company with Agess. We're a blue economy development company, and we work on water and waste issues, specifically plastic to energy and water development projects.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
and I didn't see Rob here. He might have jumped off. But let's go around real quick. Jeffrey, if you want to just introduce yourself, interest, let us know, and then we'll kind of just go through everybody that's on the list, and then we can get started. I definitely, anybody that's attending today, just want to let them know that it's important that they're involved in the conversation, and just give us a little bit of background. Jeffrey?
Yes, good morning, everybody. I am just, I'm a citizen of the US. I live in La Quinta, California. I hunt the Salton Sea, and I also hunt the Rio Hardy in Mexico. Just a concerned citizen, would love to see something happen to the Salton Sea, and I've always had an interest in trying to get involved some way. So just here to hear what you guys have to say, and hopefully something we can do to clean this mess up.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And can we jump to Jose? I have you on the top here, Jose.
Well, thank you guys for allowing me to be here. Same as Jeffrey, but I'm on the Mexican side. So I have a ranch. I'm a ranch owner by the Laguna Salada basement. And well, I want to be part of this, and I want to help as much as possible. By joining you guys, I will be more aware of, you know, whatever is happening here.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you for joining. And what kind of farming?
¿Cuál es tu apellido, José?
Galvez Moreno. Originalmente tenemos un rancho que le llaman Rancho de Dios. Creo que fuiste tú o tu hermano una vez, un pozo de agua que hizo mi papá.
Ah, sí. Ahí estuve con ustedes cuando andaba en campaña de diputado federal.
Ándale. Bueno, yo, sorry about this, guys. But we rebuilt that ranch. Sí puedo hablar en inglés o español, no importa, ¿no? Haz de cuenta que tumbamos el rancho y volvimos a hacerlo nuevo. Ahora yo lo hice, mi papá pues ya se hizo viejito, pero pues ahí nos quedamos en medio. Entonces, pues ahora me toca a mí continuar. Me quedé hasta donde Peña Nieto, no sé quién fue, iban a hacer un bordo para hacer canales, para hacer sembrado de pescado, pero sepa.
Okay.
Por eso me uní aquí para entender y ver si la escalera náutica o es otro vertical, no sé.
Okay.
Anyway, so thank you guys for allowing me to be here. It was a short talk about the background of my dad's being in a ranch called God's Ranch before. I don't know why, if they were living out of a miracle or because they want to provide miracles. But anyway, thank you.
Well, that's the hope of this project, right? It is kind of a miracle in the desert. And there's been films, just to speak on both sides of the border, about a miracle in the desert and the ability where projects can coalesce. And that was the vision for the Salton Sea a long time ago. And I know from talking with different people in Mexico as well, that was their experience with Laguna Salada. They were able to go there and experience that with their children, recreation, and the economic benefit of fishing. So that is a little bit of a miracle, and getting a project done like this is going to be a miracle, but it's not impossible. And that's the exciting thing, is that there's hope that projects of this scale can really make a big difference. So if anybody else that's on the meeting would like to raise their hand at any time, just let us know if they want to introduce. Otherwise, I'm going to introduce Jimena here, who's our collaboration partner with Ingenieria Dennis in Mexico. We've been working together hand in hand for about 4 years now, looking at the engineering feasibility, and I'd like to introduce her now. Jimena?
Hi, I'm Jimena. I'm a civil engineer, and I'm working with Ingenieria Dennis on the engineering part of the project.
Thank you so much. Well, I guess we'll get started now. Jimena has been a critical part of the project, along with the owner of the company, Alan Dennis. He wasn't able to make it today, but really looking at this project holistically. So I really appreciate all of her effort and all of her time getting things going. Rob, I see that you joined again. If you would like, I don't see your audio here, but if you'd like to jump in real quick and give everybody an introduction, that would be good. Otherwise, I can start sharing the screen. Go ahead, Rob, if you're ready. And yeah, doesn't look like he's on right now, but we'll just get started. So I'm going to try and take it very slow, so myself and Jimena can work on translating so the information can be shared, and then I'll kind of let her take the lead. And the focus of this presentation and this summary, I'll do a project summary that we submitted to the California Natural Resources Agency. A little bit of background. In 2016, I requested that they have an RFP, RFQ, and RFI submittal. And so through that process, we wanted to have a fair platform where the state of California can review all projects. So that way we weren't an unbiased single entity applying for a project, that we had an open platform that all ideas can come to the table, because that's really important. So in 2016, we requested that project and process of the Long Range Planning Committee. In 2017, we went back and asked again, please have an RFI, RFP, RFQ process. In 2018, the Natural Resources Agency released an RFI for water importation to the Salton Sea. We were one of the teams that submitted with 11 other groups. And we had some feedback that came back to us from the state of California, and we started working diligently on those. Part of it was land ownership in coordination with Mr. Beltran and the Cucapah, as well as the other Ejido owners. Other parts of it were salinity levels within the Salton Sea, and we've really addressed a majority of those comments. When we resubmitted that package, we were informed that the state was going to have a third-party review committee. And that took about a year to get through the process, but they selected the California Natural Resources Agency commitment to UC Santa Cruz, and UC Santa Cruz is the third-party reviewer that's going to look at the old projects as well as new submittals. So they took new projects in September, and we were amongst 11 other teams that resubmitted the projects, and then a few projects that were new. Part of this might be a conversation to have a parallel sister review committee in Mexico. Not that competition is a great thing, but we want Mexico to feel confident that they have reviewed it with their own government agencies to look at all the possibilities. We feel that Tres Lagunas, as we call it, has the biggest benefit for Mexico because it includes the restoration of Laguna Salada. And the other part is that the project as a whole can restore the Colorado River Basin, and very few projects that pipe water across the Mexico border to the Salton Sea has an economic benefit for the community of Mexico or the Ejidos of Mexico. And that became a predominant goal of ours, is not only look at the carbon sequestration of Laguna Salada, but the economic opportunities from recreation or additional farming systems that can be trained in the community. So there are seawater farming systems, and this might be of interest to Jose and his family or other Ejidos, that you can grow shrimp and tilapia and bivalves, all of the foods, and you can also use the effluent water to feed salicornia plants and other halophytes that can be used for biofuel and biojet fuel. So there's exciting economic opportunities that come about Laguna Salada restoration. So the summary is that we resubmitted to them. We should have results the summer of 2022 from UC Santa Cruz and the California Natural Resources Agency. And we hope that this is another forum to involve the cities and states of Mexico and the residents. And maybe there might be an opportunity to have a sister review committee, the Sonoran Institute, or other research agencies to look at the proposals that are being had and see which ones have the best economic, environmental, and water benefits for Mexico. So that might just be an interesting outcome that we talk about today. So that's a little bit of the background. I want to just quickly share some of the information and maybe pause for a minute. Mena, what I was going to say is maybe you can just introduce in Espanol just those three critical things: the RFI, the submittal, and the dates. So the goal is that we resubmitted to the state of California in September. There would be results in summer of 2022, and the possibility of a review committee that maybe is in Mexico.
Voy a resumir y voy a traducir lo que acaba de decir Nathan. Me pidió que les dijera que se mandó la propuesta a USC Santa Cruz en California y se espera tener resultados del proyecto para el verano del 2022, y espera que se pueda crear como se pueda revisar el proyecto también en México con una organización mexicana para ver los beneficios que se pueden tener también en México y que no nomás sea parte de Estados Unidos.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And so this presentation will be in Espanol. So I think the images on the screen we could share later, and maybe I could just talk through the presentation, and then we'll have Jimena give her presentation as well afterward. So this will just be an introduction, and I know we're going to be respectful of everybody's time. What we wanted to do is quickly present this, and then we'll open up the discussion to Cesar and the tribal groups, as well as other Ejido owners, to talk about interests, comments, concerns, questions. We'll share our contact information, and then we'll allow Jimena to also do the same. And then anytime anybody has a question, feel free to either raise your hand or unmute and just interrupt me. Is okay? So as a whole, we call the project Tres Lagunas, and that was informed from the three lagoons within Mexicali. On our first trip, we met with several agencies and entities, and they said, hey, there's these 3 lagoons within Mexicali, and we really focused on the ability to use floating islands and other treatment systems, other technology to clean up the Alamo River, the New River, and the Salton Sea itself. But there could be other applications for that. And the idea of Tres Lagunas became Sea of Cortez, or the Gulf of California, Laguna Salada, and then the Salton Sea. Many other projects will focus on the Salton Sea, its shoreline, but to me, this project has much bigger context, and it really is, you know, to a scale at which is a global template for climate change restoration. So the main idea of the project is to focus on the water cycle. We're actually using and helping Laguna Salada flood with high tides, and the water cycle is really going to be encouraging evaporation. And so when we have areas like the Colorado River Basin, we've been in a 20-year drought scenario. We can see that over time, there was more water in Laguna Salada, that meant that there was more water in the Colorado River Delta and the Colorado River itself. So this time, specifically in this area, was high point. And in that high point, that was when Laguna Salada was full in 1982, 84, 86, 88. And so we can kind of see that there might be a correlation between more water in the river and when Laguna Salada was at its high point. So this is the overall concept. We have a hypothesis, and we have many scientists that are looking at it. We have many scientists that are willing to provide technical studies, and we call those regional climate models. To be able to look at the information, to be able to show these simulations of a restored Laguna Salada and a restored Salton Sea and how that will affect this region. But these are some of our hypotheses to get started. And looking at this graph, high points within the Colorado River Basin, the most water that comes as rain is actually during the summer months. That's a really exciting point. As you see in this graph, this is when most of the rain falls in the region. So we think that we might be able to encourage and enhance that to some degree. The overall project has many just predominant infrastructure pieces, single pieces to bring the water in, bring the water all the way to the Salton Sea, and bring the water that was in Laguna Salada back to the Sea of Cortez and balance out the salinity that's happening within the Sea of Cortez. Right now, it has a lot of tidal flooding plains. So the estuary that's in the Colorado River Delta is actually dying, and it's almost dead. So we hope that recirculating ocean water through Laguna Salada and around, as well as blending water that comes from Laguna Salada, would not have any adverse impacts on the Sea of Cortez or the Gulf of California, actually have a positive benefit. And then you have a lot of these different additional economic opportunities that can come in. Seawater farming, as I described, new wind resources, pumped hydroelectric storage, and just the overall opportunity for hydroelectric power generation. So this is an overall diagram. High tides in the region are able to bring water into Laguna Salada and then bring water back out. And then we have the blending of incoming ocean water with higher salinity Laguna Salada water that goes back out. Water going into the Salton Sea would never come back out, and that is a predominant benefit. We want the Salton Sea high salinity water to stay within that region. So these are environmental. I'll go through these quickly and then I'll share this in the chat, but there's a lot of environmental opportunities that could be done right now today. We can start enhancing the Alamo and the New River, as well as the Salton Sea with enhanced vegetation. This is kind of a diagram of the salinity balance that we would do, and we would actually be able to make much better environmental opportunities and recreation in the majority of the Salton Sea. And then one part of it would just be a high salinity zone. It could shrink over time or be modified at any time. And that's an overall diagram of the timing, the costs, the projections, just to show the different phasing plans. Some nice opportunities for recreation. The conversation that we're focusing on today is phase 2, Laguna Salada. And this is a region that is a very protected habitat. It grew over many thousands of years, and this is the ancestral ground of the Cucapah, as well as the Kumeyaay, over many thousands of years. We look at this as being the second largest lake in Mexico, and it will be a salty lake, but it won't be too salty, and it will stay at an optimal salinity for vibrant habitat. We also hope that this could be a potential safe place for the vaquita and the totuaba, and have it be a protected estuary over time as well, but also a productive farming opportunity on the shore. This is the current runoff. This is currently what's happening is this is high salinity that goes back out into the sea, and that might be causing adverse impact to the vaquita or totuaba or other endangered species in the northern tip of the Sea of Cortez. We look at that in 3 different phases. As you can see, there's not a lot of financial cost involved in this project, and the cost burden is on whether it be the United States of California or the United States of America, the state of California, or private investors. None of this cost is expected to be or requested of Mexico or any of the agencies within Mexico. We just see this as a low-cost benefit for a very, very large habitat project. And it's in line with the goals of the Climate Paris Agreement. This is phase 3. How would we bring water across the border? This is a very easy and can be done in different phases. So we're not complicating the restoration of Laguna Salada or the Salton Sea. They could be done in 3 parallel paths. Dropping water in, hydroelectric power generation, and pump stations, pipes for things that we're going to cross the border. Again, I showed you in my animation at the beginning, there could be a boat canal eventually that brings boats back and forth to the Sea of Cortez and Laguna Salada and the Salton Sea. But, you know, for a pumping up an economic and environmental project, we need to fill up the Salton Sea first. We could always do a canal later. It just is much more complicated. This is in totality the 3 different phases. We have phase 1, Salton Sea. That could be started right now today, $260 million. That would start filling up the Salton Sea and mitigating dust almost immediately. We have phase 2, which is Laguna Salada, Sea of Cortez. That could be done very quickly, low cost, and lots of acreages of dust mitigation. Then we have phase 3, connecting the 2 pieces of the puzzle. And all 3 of these, as I mentioned, can be done in parallel phases for permitting and then construction. If we could build this in 2 years and it costs 2 years to permit this entire area, that is a very, very fast timeline for getting a very large project. It can start to help with the United States and Northern Baja's drought conditions. I'll go through these quickly, but these are the type of regional climate models that we're projected to invest in and get done to show what's happening in the region. These are the benefits on both sides of the border. It's not only the tribal economic benefit, the renewable energy side, the ecology and the environmental restoration, but in whole, it has the biggest benefit for all stakeholders. And then we look at recreation opportunities. We can have visitor centers, hiking trails, different paths around Laguna Salada as well to encourage, and as well as special events in the region. Looking at mobility, lots of different opportunities for new mobility paths. As Dr. Andrea Neal mentioned earlier, we can actually utilize plastic waste and tires for different purposes, including our fueling of vessels needed to build this project and grid energy. So a big part of this, as everybody knows in Mexico and in the United States, we don't ever want to see big fields of tires. Why can't we restore and clean up the habitat and provide electricity and fuel, as well as the base products, the rubber and the metals that can go back into the new manufacturing in the region? And we look at these as modular units that could be deployed, and it doesn't have emissions in the standard process. It's a no sulfur diesel fuel operation. This project also included the potential of having salt drying ponds and mines, so that way we can finance and help the project get off the ground, as well as be self-sufficient, and having a small portion of Laguna Salada be a drying pond, but it still has the evaporation potential. I mentioned before seawater farming and productive farming. All 3 of these could help new businesses come into the region, or as Jose mentioned, adapt his farm and add additional acreages to include some of these other operations. What a beautiful picture here. I mean, this is an amazing area. For me, conceptually, I stepped in and I just looked at Google Earth and I said, this is the way to restore the Salton Sea. We need to restore Laguna Salada. How beautiful would that be? And how much cost would that reduce rather than piping water from the Sea of Cortez all the way past this? Why not restore this and reduce the cost, where we can bring water within 7 miles of the US-Mexico border? But we have environmental, economic, social, and political benefits in Baja, as well as Mexico. And then on the US side, many of the same different benefits. We have the ecological, the environmental, and the new renewable energy resources, as well as the political capital to get action done on climate change. and really be a non-political type of collaboration on both sides of the border. So we see the role of the different agencies being involved in this in Mexico, as well as the different agencies being involved on the US side of the border, and all of them in collaboration. In conclusion, we're just looking at this as a benefit for not only the region, not only the state or the federal government, but all of the residents that live there. We see this economic opportunity being new farming operations, but also existing farmers wanting to help where they don't have the current economic opportunities to be able to come into the region and help with the restoration effort. And we see this as a template for expanding around the world, where we can actually add seawater as our beneficial product rather than it just being a negative impact. That's the final diagram. I'm happy to answer any questions and open to discussion, and then we can turn it over to Jimena. Muchas gracias. I don't see any hands just yet. Any questions of anybody? Would you be open to some new farming systems, Jose, if we had a regenerative resources team be able to come into the area?
Well, the thing is, there were plans before about having like a nautic ladder where there will be canals to the Ejidos or to the nearby ranches, but it's an old thought about having tilapia or so on. I mean, we don't even know anything about it. We went to the government offices to learn, but back then the people was, not financially available to do it. And even though they even have to get enough training just to understand how the tilapia, grows or how it needs to be farmed. On the other hand, there are dates as well. There is an ejido called Manatú. They have a lot of date plantations, and they are worried about, or there are concerns about the humidity levels, but we also wanted to do dates on our land as well. And we prepare a pond for the tilapias. We prepare a big pond. You can see it over the map, but if there were to be a canal with the salty water, that might help. But my only concern on this is how far is going to be my ranch from all that water. Maybe I have to move up.
So you're currently within the border or the shoreline of Laguna Salada, is that correct?
I believe it's going to be a shoreline. I'm at pole number 5.
Mm-hmm.
If you know the area, there is a pole number 5 or post number 5, where it's about 35 kilometers from the Pavarotti spot. And our ejido is named General Rodolfo Sanchez Taboada. So it goes from the bottom of the Salada up to the main road going to the canyon by the Wash Road, main road, right in front of the Tahoe Canyon.
And let me discuss that real quick. So you mentioned moving, and one thing that we studied in great detail, and I wanted to give an opportunity for one other person to speak before they have to leave, but we started studying in great detail the effects or the non-effects on the water table. So a big conception is that when you flood Laguna Salada, that's going to infiltrate the freshwater aquifers. And in our mapping, we actually found that those are much higher than the shoreline. And when you add ocean water, that actually will hold fresh water on top of it. And when new water resources come in from the mountains, when we have rain events, that will actually hold water on top of those areas. So there shouldn't be any need to move unless you might be within the Laguna Salada shoreline. But our hope is that would not have any negative impact on any current operations.
Well, over the map is showing like 5+ meters on top of the sea level.
Okay. Yep.
What we're looking at doing is flooding to about 2 meters in height. The 1984 image that you see in the satellite imagery is about 4 meters, maybe a little more, because it got all the way out to the floodplain on the Baja Peninsula side. So it's going to be a little lower than that. Getting it higher than that is really physically hard to do. That could only ever happen at the combination of the highest tides with typhoon or hurricane and other such things. But that drain line that we're putting in is always going to make it less prone to major flooding. So I don't think, if you look at about the 1986-87 level of the lake on the satellite imagery, that's about what we're talking about.
All right. So it's going to be mostly on the Cucapah side, right?
Mostly, yes.
I'd like to bring in, before you have to leave, I know, Mr. Ada, would you like to maybe comment before you have to depart the meeting today?
Yes, I think it's a very interesting project, and I share with Jose the concern about the highest level of the you know, of the tide of the lake, of the Laguna Salada, and if you could please share me the background and the presentation that you just did, and also if you have all the background of the project, like you were saying, like what is the timeline, what is the, you know, for the approval that you said that UC Santa Cruz was doing the review, and we can start working on the Mexican side, as you said, about the sister committee that could overview. I think the Sonora Institute would be great. There's Pro Natura as well, and we could see probably a research or institute like CICESE, or I don't know who else from UABC, the state university. Let's see who can join up and overview the project, you know, to see the feasibility. And just a suggestion, as you know, as a citizen, in Mexicali, we have already something that we call the Tres Lagunas, and you are calling your project Tres Lagunas. I think there could be like a misunderstanding, and also because there are not 3 lagoons, since you are considering the Sea of Cortez, which is a sea, a lagoon in Spanish. And I think like people will get confused if you are trying to sell it like that, the project. It's just my perception as a local citizen of Mexicali, because and I think they will agree with me, the people from the Laguna Salada, since las tres lagunas in Mexicali are Xochimilco, Mexico, and Campestre, which are in the center of Mexicali, and that's the water that comes from the different canals, and I don't know how do you call drains, but it's all the drained water that comes from the crops, you know, from the fields, and of the Mexicali Valley. So I think that's what we consider in Mexicali the 3 lagoons system. So probably name it. I know there are 3 different spots of water, you know, 3 different eyes of water, but I don't know how you can call them, not like 3 lagoons. See, the Sea of Cortez is a sea, is not a lagoon.
Yeah, and that's a great suggestion. Maybe the 3 C's, right? 3 C's,
something like that.
Yeah, and so the inspiration, and I wanted to mention it. Thank you so much for your input. And it might be a combination, like you mentioned, the different organizations as review groups. Maybe all 3 of them might have a participation role, or there's one that gets selected to review all the projects that the state's reviewing. I think that's a great suggestion. And our hope was that Tres Lagunas within Mexicali can have the same technology that actually this project can implement, which is floating islands and water treatment systems. So hopefully that can come over time.
Yes, I'm sharing my information. I need to go to a different meeting. I have previously in my agenda, but I'm going to share you my information in the chat, so you can all have it. And feel free to send me an email with the presentations, and also a WhatsApp to register your contact information. And thank you very much. I am willing to help, and we are very glad to join you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tejada. I greatly appreciate your time. Muchas gracias. So with that, let's transition. Jimena, unless we had any other questions, if Guadalupe or anybody else would like to speak, now is a good time to, you can either raise your hand or unmute. And then after a few seconds, maybe we can transition to having Jimena give a brief presentation on the economic side of it. If anybody would like to raise their hand or unmute real quick, happy to have you. Hello.
Hello, this is Gerald Katz.
Hi, Gerald.
Hi, I'm glad I could make it. Got the reminder and was able to tune it. I'm very thrilled seeing all these presentations and the people working on this. I've thought about, I'm sending you some, I'll send you some documents that I made back in 2015, having a dream of people doing this creative work to improve the environment, the economy, and the lives of the people in the whole region.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gerald. I appreciate that. All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, let me spotlight Jimena. She can take it from here. Thank you, Jimena.
Okay.
Bueno. Jimena.
Sí, dime.
Perdón. Además un apoyo, mire. Quería comentar que aquí está en el grupo del arquitecto Bernardo Salcedo. A él le pedimos que fuera nuestro enlace para cuestiones de procedimientos que prevé la legislación ambiental para trámites, permisos y la participación de instituciones como la COSEF, el NatBank, y ya tiene información al respecto. Le pedí, no sé si podría participar el arquitecto Bernardo para que nos hablara de la propuesta que él trae sobre el tema.
Claro que sí. Nathan, he was saying that we have architect Bernardo on the line and that he has a proposal on the necessary permits and process needed to carry out the project.
Sure. Let's
He asked if we could talk about it and I said yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sí, buenos días. Sí, como dice el licenciado Guadalupe Acuña, y yo creo que este proyecto pues es idóneo y creo que es el momento ya para presentarlo dentro de la Comisión de Cooperación Ecológica Fronteriza, la COSEF, que se fundó en 1993 y pues coordina las instancias de los gobiernos de Estados Unidos y de México, tanto a nivel federal como estatal y locales, en ese tipo de proyectos de saneamiento ambiental, como es el presente proyecto. Ahora, asimismo se creó también el Banco de Desarrollo de Norteamérica, el NatBank, y en noviembre de 2017, recientemente, se fusionaron la COSEF y el NatBank para ese tipo de proyectos. Este proyecto entra perfectamente dentro de la gestión de este organismo, de la COSEF y NatBank, ahora funcionados. Y en él están representados los dos gobiernos, como ya mencioné, así como las instituciones educativas y la representación de los inversionistas o interesados a nivel local y la participación ciudadana. Creo que hace un momento yo de la presentación no vi precisamente a la COSEF ni al NatBank dentro de la propuesta de la gestión por parte de estos organismos. Es muy importante y sería muy valiosa y creo que es el momento indicado para que, pues si no se ha hecho o no se ha iniciado, se inicie. Es un proyecto muy importante, califica perfectamente dentro de este organismo y ellos tienen guías para la presentación, así como para la certificación de ese tipo de proyectos. Sería bueno considerarlo porque ahí es un organismo que se creó precisamente para ese tipo de proyectos binacionales. Como ese, califican perfectamente y pues no veo que las fechas se haya estado considerando. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you so much.
Okay, so a quick summary of what he said. is that he thinks that right now is the moment to present a project to an agency called COSEF, which is in charge of environmental projects, that recently merged with NARPAC, and they represent both sides of the government, education centers, and potential investors, and that he thinks we should look into opportunities with them, and that he did not see that on the presentation.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you so much. That's great direction. And we kind of see that both sides of the border, you know, within 100 miles or so, this fits within that area. And so, you know, not only, and eventually, you know, this project, Laguna Salada, could be its own project, Salton Sea could be its own, but this could be a collaboration. So I appreciate that very much, Mr. Salcedo.
Thank you.
Okay. Mi presentación va a ser en español. Si alguien necesita que aclare algo en inglés, me puede decir. Voy a dar rápido porque algunas de estas partes ya las dimos con Nathan. Básicamente, el proyecto va a consistir en inundar la Laguna Salada para restaurar el hábitat de la Laguna Salada y para restaurar el salto en sí. En la imagen se puede ver el área afectada. Tenemos, otra vez ya lo vimos con Nathan esto, ya vimos que las mayores precipitaciones se tienen cuando la Laguna Salada estaba llena en los años 80. Entonces, parte de la hipótesis de este proyecto es que al inundar Laguna Salada y el Salton Sea se cree una mayor precipitación en el delta del Colorado, lo que llevaría a mayor lluvias y a mayor escorrentía por el río Colorado, y por lo tanto a lo mejor una mayor cantidad de agua para nuestro país, para México. Esto ya lo vimos. Son el resultado de un levantamiento de campo que se hizo en el canal de Coyote. Se puede ver el perfil y las alturas. Tenemos una altura de 3.48 metros. También ya lo dijo Nathan, pero si este proyecto se lleva a cabo, sería el segundo lago más grande de todo México y el primer lago de agua salada más grande de México. Se espera que tenga una elevación máxima de 4 metros y una elevación mínima de menos 10 metros. Pero no todo el área de Laguna Salada se va a inundar, esto es simplemente en condiciones actuales. Se tienen 4 mayores objetivos de este proyecto. El primero es restaurar ambientalmente la Laguna Salada, mejorar las condiciones económicas de la comunidad de Cucapah, ejidatarios y de toda la región, promover nuevas oportunidades de crecimiento y generar espacios de recreación. El proyecto intenta ser un proyecto sostenible donde se mezcle tanto el sector económico como el social como el ambiental para hacer un proyecto integral en donde no solamente se transporte agua al salto en sí, sino que se cree beneficio para México. Esto ya lo vimos. Básicamente el proyecto se puede dividir en 4 proyectos grandes, que es la infraestructura verde, los espacios recreativos que se van a generar y las actividades productivas que pueden salir de inundar Laguna Salada. Básicamente la infraestructura verde consiste en llenar la Laguna Salada, crear zonas de humedales y utilizar energías renovables para la manutención del proyecto y la energía que se necesite para llevar a cabo el proyecto. En espacios recreativos se prevé que se tengan áreas deportivas terrestres para hacer senderismo, hiking, se puede hacer navegación, tener un muelle, pesca deportiva, un área de educación ecológica, áreas para estar, áreas recreativas y servicios generales. Se prevé que se necesite construir vialidades primarias, tipo libramiento, vialidades secundarias, calles y senderos dentro de la zona, senderos para equitación, para hiking, un circuito para bicicleta, una integración vial de todo el complejo y estacionamientos. ¿Cuáles son los beneficios ecológicos para Mexicali? Específicamente, se prevé que se tenga una reducción de la penetración de sal y de la salinidad en la parte norte del estuario y el acuífero del río Colorado, la creación de un hábitat marino, la disminución de la salinidad marina en la reserva de la biosfera, la restauración de la parte local de la ruta migratoria del Pacífico, un incremento en la población local, que como se mencionó anteriormente, puede tener un incremento en la precipitación, el cuerpo de agua que modere las temperaturas de la zona y reducir la contaminación por polvo que tenemos. Uno de los mayores efectos que se desea tener es reducir la salinidad de la zona. Esto se debe a que las olas actualmente del mar suben por el delta del río Colorado y se evaporan dejando la sal por la parte de atrás. Entonces, este proyecto pretende reducir esta evaporación de agua y la concentración de sal en la zona sur. También se prevé crear un hábitat marino, creando así un hábitat para especies como la tilapia, como el camarón, entre otras de la zona. Ya lo vimos. Otra de las cosas que hablamos, la restauración de la ruta migratoria del Pacífico. Llenar la Laguna Salada va a permitir que las aves que utilicen la ruta migratoria del Pacífico usen el cuerpo de agua como un lugar para descansar y alimentarse. Hay estudios que establecen que la evaporación en la zona de la Laguna Salada es de 2.41 metros por metro cúbico por año. Entonces, se prevé que se incremente exponencialmente la cantidad de evaporación que se tiene en la zona. Una gráfica donde se ve la evaporación de la Laguna Salada, de la Conagua. ¿Cómo se prevé moderar las temperaturas? El agua actúa principalmente como un efecto de enfriamiento. Entonces se pueden lograr climas con menores temperaturas en verano y noches más cálidas en invierno. Inundar Laguna Salada va a reducir la cantidad de partículas de polvo suspendido en el aire y pues por lo tanto se reduce la contaminación de polvo proveniente del área que estaba previamente seca. Y se proponen 3 actividades productivas aparte del proyecto ambiental. La primera es la salina, que se ubica en la parte noroeste de la Laguna Salada, o se pretende ubicar en la parte noroeste de la Laguna Salada. Tiene una capacidad de producción de millones de toneladas por año, dependiendo de la superficie que se utilice para el proyecto. Puede aumentar la capacidad de exportación nacional y tiene un mercado de varios millones de pesos anuales actualmente en México. Aparte, se generarán cientos de empleos entre obreros, técnicos y directivos. La agricultura con agua de mar se pretende que sea en la parte sur de la Laguna Salada y se puede tener usos en el sector farmacológico para el tratamiento de presión arterial, enfermedades del hígado graso, obesidad y osteoporosis, culinario como para venta de pescados y usos industriales como para producir alimentos para animales y como materia prima de biocombustible. Esto ya lo habló Nathan, se pretende utilizar salicornia, pero también se pueden utilizar otras variedades de plantas que puedan ser cosechadas con agua de mar. Y por último tenemos la cultura. Se pretenden establecer granjas de camarón. Se pretende tener producción anual de miles de toneladas, ventas comerciales de millones de pesos y generación de empleos y aumentar la producción total nacional de camarón. Y para poder realizar este proyecto se requiere una gran cantidad de personas y específicamente en el área gubernamental, nosotros tenemos considerados a Conagua, la Semarnat, Conapesca, la Secretaría de Comunicaciones y Transportes, la Secretaría de Desarrollo Agrario, Territorial y Urbano, el Registro Agrario Nacional, la Dirección de Protección al Ambiente de Mexicali, la Secretaría de Protección al Ambiente de Baja California y obviamente el gobierno municipal, estatal y federal. Algunas de las problemáticas que nosotros hemos identificado es la posible eutroficación de la Laguna Salada y el control de la salinidad de la Laguna Salada. Algunas de las medidas que se pueden tomar para evitar la eutroficación es crear proyectos como la aireación hipolimétrica, o sea, la oxigenación del agua, la estabilización de la biomasa en las plantas acuáticas, garantizar una buena circulación del agua, utilizando el canal de retorno, la manipulación para la reducción de los niveles de biomasa, utilizar indicadores enfocados en nitrógeno, fosfato y carbono para medir los nutrientes y evitar que estén en mayores cantidades de las necesarias, y el control de descargas domésticas, industriales y agrícolas en la laguna. Para controlar la salinidad se pueden utilizar, crear un dique en el cuerpo de agua, enfocándose en reducir el área de captación, implementar un canal de drenaje, monitorear los controles de salinización, establecer modelos numéricos capaces de predecir el comportamiento de la salinidad del área, integrar estrategias de administración, inyectar importantes volúmenes de agua fresca, y mezclar con volúmenes importantes de agua con menores cantidades. No. Ay, Dios. Para atrás. Y los principales beneficios en México en el área ambiental es restablecer el ecosistema de Laguna Salada a su versión original cuando descargaban aguas del río Colorado ahí, proyectos de inversión en infraestructura de energías renovables, oportunidad de crear nuevos hábitats. En el aspecto económico, bienestar a las comunidades del lugar, aumentar el valor económico de las tierras y traer inversión nacional y extranjera. En el aspecto social, establecer nuevas comunidades, mejorar la calidad de vida para la comunidad Cucapah y los ejidatarios y residentes de la zona, crear nuevos espacios recreativos y de movilidad. Y en el aspecto político es cumplir con la entrega de agua para contrarrestar el fenómeno de escasez de agua en el río Colorado, gestionar nuevos acuerdos producto de la cooperación binacional, donde puede aumentarse la entrega de volumen de agua anual por el río Colorado por el aumento de la precipitación debido a que se llene Laguna Salada. Como conclusión, la restauración de Laguna Salada sería de las más grandes del mundo en su tipo, es incluso más grande que el Salton Sea, y recuperar este sitio proveerá de una importante zona de infraestructura verde, productiva y recreativa para México, Mexicali y la región. ¿Preguntas?
Muchas gracias, Jimena. Do we have any questions, any comments? Anybody that has anything to say about some of the information here?
So far, so good for me. Pretty clear.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And maybe, so the goal that we had in this conversation was to bring, as you heard, government official or officials or representatives. That's part of the discussion for, the next tier of this. But the first part that we wanted to hear from is really the tribal community, the Cucapah, and then also the Ejido owners. And then we can also bring it back to any political or government officials that we'd like to, and then just kind of keep the conversation going. So at this time, if we want to bring about that conversation again, we can see if we have anybody, Mr. Beltran, if you want to talk briefly, if interested. If not, that's okay too. But just kind of from the perspective of the Cucapah community, we mentioned your goal earlier is for their benefit, and maybe you can just expand on that a little bit. What you want to see from a project, any project, what goals would the tribe really want to see for the people themselves, but also for the community as a whole? If you'd like to share a little bit of information, that'd be good. Also, if we have any tribal members themselves, they can have a free opportunity to speak as well.
Well, thank you, Nathan, for the opportunity and for this presentation. Also to all the people involved.
I will take all these comments and all this information to the community so they can make a decision for themselves, and then we'll let you know how we, what is our position in this project and all the concerns from the community and any other question. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Beltran. So, yeah, and I'll just kind of also talk real quick if we have anybody that wants to put their hands up. We allocated a little extra time just to make sure everybody's comments were kind of included in the conversation. But, you know, we don't have to take the full amount of time if we don't need. So, but what I wanted to just say overall, my goal is that this is a project, again, for and by the community that has the most benefit for Mexico, but also has the most benefit for the Salton Sea. But there's only a small amount of time. The Salton Sea is dying, right? It's nearing that point where it's tipping over the salinity zone. So the reason why we designed this project in 3 phases is that it can really help the Salton Sea right now today. If we had permits, if we had our dredges and we had the funding to implement, we can start building the salinity encapsulation berm to start reducing salinity and increasing the height of the Salton Sea itself. And that could happen right now today. So we are actively looking after private investors. If we have a private investor that says, yes, we really care about the environment and we really want to see this economic opportunity successful, that might be a different conversation that we take to the state of California and the review committee. Here's a private investor. We're looking for reimbursement from the state if we can address, you know, the salinity issues and the height of the Salton Sea. This private investor will put the money in. We will do all the permits. I actually also work at development services with the city of San Diego. So I'm a development project manager. This is a much more complex permit. We need help from everybody involved, as we'd have to go to SILA and the International Water and Boundary Commission. But that's what I do as a professional, is to do the permitting aspects of it. And then comes the construction. The dredges and the equipment to actually build and dredge out the dirt can be done by local community members. And that's going to be much different than many of the other companies. Many other groups will have on their staff 10 or 12 people that do the project, and it takes a very long time. Not to point any fingers, but you know, the Red Hill Bay project has been under construction for 10 years, right? Species Conservation Habitat Project, 10-year projects just in the permitting side of it. So our hope and our goal is we can take private investment or government capital to get the project implemented quickly and have the best benefit for the residents as well as the environment. Really, none of the other projects that are talking about the Salton Sea has the benefit of enhancing the North American monsoon and adding water into the Colorado River Basin, and that water can flow down to Mexico as well. And that might be part of what Mr. Saucedo mentioned, these coordination with NADBank and different agencies. That can also further the discussion for water rights within Mexico, asking for more or at least meeting the treaty obligations of water rights. So that's the overall goal. We have a hand. Rob, would you like to say something real quick?
Yes, I would like to make a couple brief comments. As a team, Agess has been working on researching every little aspect of this for the last 5 years or more. And, you know, as we continue to do, we're currently submitting to the X Prize, which is CO2 emissions reduction or CO2 sequestration. But all the time, new research is coming up. One of the things in looking at the monsoon precipitation last year, it looks like flooding Laguna Salada will actually increase regional local precipitation on the Baja Peninsula, on the mesa or coastal mountains to the west of Laguna Salada is a primary area where it will rain up there, flow down those existing drainage channels into the aquifer where the palm farms are and such. Another thing that we ran into is, I think everyone knows that in the Gulf of California, up at El Golfo de Santa Clara, way up at the northern end, tides are highest there and they're lowest down toward the mouth. And it's because everything gets closer together as you move north. So it's called tidal amplification. Tides are higher up there. A recent NASA article is warning all the cities on the coast of America that come the mid 2030s, in combination with global sea level rise, there's going to be kind of what's called a lunar standstill, meaning that, long story short, gravitational pull is strongest this time of year. This is what the Maya knew, the Aztec knew, the Anasazi knew. Everyone knew it. That's why their calendars were all based on it. But come 2034, you get this other tidal maximum. It was very much like 2015, where we saw the most erosion in the Delta and the most flooding of Laguna Salada from those tidal flows. So come 2034, again, the chances are pretty good that we're going to either see more flooding into the Mexicali Valley, up the Colorado River Basin, or into Laguna Salada. If we act reasonably soon, we can divert that going into Laguna Salada and not further up into Mexicali and or the Colorado River. That's what the research is looking like. That's it.
Thank you so much, Rob. And maybe you can talk real quickly about the Delta too, because there's several concerns that we had. One I kind of mentioned already, if you want to expand upon it, but the aquifers, the other is the Delta, and then the other is the Sea of Cortez. So those are, or the Gulf of California, those three areas of how we anticipate. We don't have proof yet because we need environmental analysis. We need funding to do all of the hydrology studies, but also the ability for the high tides to bring water all the way in and around our system at Laguna Salada. I'd say all of us, right, maybe you can talk about those real quick.
Sure. It's well known that the northern Gulf of California is basically everything north of the archipelago. And there's what's called San Sebastian Sill there, which is just a geologic structure that trapped all the sediments, meaning that the northern Gulf is much shallower than the southern Gulf. When tides flow in there, everything gets concentrated, all the tides go up. A secondary thing that happens is due to the Coriolis Effect, because the Earth spins, it's going around the sun. Basically, the tide goes off towards the eastern coast. Towards El Golfo de Santa Clara. And it creates, at the very northern end of this, a tidal circulation, which causes the sedimentation to redistribute. So that it gets really fast, current flows really fast, water gets up, flows up on the top of the floodplain. Most of the erosion occurs when it flows back down off of the floodplain into the bottom of the channels. And that pulls up all the fine silts. And there's lots of aerial photography showing the brown cloud of silts floating down the western side, the Baja Peninsula side of the Northern Gulf. The same documentation, the same PhD studies, they also show that turbid water with all the sediments in it to also be the highest salinity water. So that flows down the Baja Peninsula, down past San Felipe, and it flows down into the deep part of the Gulf of California itself. We're going to enhance, basically, if you've ever been to the beach and you know where the tide's going in and there's a tide going out, there's a rip tide going out. Or a wave coming in and there's a rip tide going out. We're going to reorganize that kind of circle such that, you know, right now it goes in on the west side of Montague Island and out on the west side of Montague Island. We're just going to extend that pattern into the northern portion of Laguna Salada, using that same sort of tidal energy. We're going to, by putting in the check dam, we will tend to stabilize, instead of having a 12-meter tidal range in the estuary itself, you'll more likely have a 3 to 4 meter tidal range. At the northern end of Laguna Salada, you'll probably have maybe a 1 meter tidal range, and that will be a very slow, that will change elevation with the phases of the moon. Not with the 12-hour normal tidal thing that everyone's accustomed to. But yes, a lot of evaporation there will induce greater precipitation and actually change hot, dry air moving into the Colorado River Basin into cooler, moister air. Kind of will work like a swamp cooler to some extent. But there's lots of things that can be done, especially with that drainage channel. The bigger we make the drainage channel, the easier it is for the tides to push water through. Hey, we could go all the way to building it big enough to be a port. I'm not sure anyone wants that or not, but yeah, we could do that. Dredging in the silts and sands, those silts and sands below Laguna Salada, extending all the way out, are like 2,000 meters deep. So we're never going to run out of silt and sand to be able to stack up or put into sandbags and be able to divert things. But because of the evolving tidal situation, it's my strong opinion that some type of management needs to be exercised on what I term excess tidal energy in the delta that is actually causing greater and greater erosion. Because the tides go up, they're real high. At one point it comes in and it makes erosion and creates a bigger, all the channels get bigger, which means tides go in and out easier. More water comes in, which means more water gets on top of the floodplain, which means that more erosion occurs when it goes out. So you have a self-reinforcing loop of, yes, in the very near future, like old school Deutschland, where they use the windmills to pump the water out. That type of situation is coming to the southern Mexicali Valley, the Colorado River itself, and the Delta. And right now we have time to fix it, to think ahead.
Right.
Look at what we can do with it. Okay.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, Rob. And so the ideas that he's mentioning is that this is a system, and we are submitting this project to the X Prize to look at carbon sequestration as well. That might be another funding mechanism, like Mr. Salcedo has been sharing about NAB Bank. I'll bring those two documents up really quick. It's you know, yet another opportunity for funding. We can get seed capital through the X Prize because we can sequester a lot of carbon in this area. Let me just share a couple of things real quick, and I believe I put it in the chat as well. So this one is what Mr. Salcedo mentioned. So if we look at this region, this zone encapsulates all of the area south of the border for Laguna Salada restoration, and pretty much it looks like all of the area for the Salton Sea as well. And then more importantly, this is the whole region. So once we can really have successful systems of water treatment, these can be deployed in other areas and other communities. I just wanted to share real quick this image that I put in the chat. They weren't able to make it today. I was hoping that some of the team members at Regenerative Resources might be able to come today and just talk briefly, but this image is just amazing. Can everybody see that on the screen? Right. Let me make sure we can see this one, because it's pretty amazing once we actually look at it. Here we go. I might have had the wrong screen. So this is what the areas around Laguna Salada probably currently look like. This is actually a different area down in Baja that they're working on a project. Oh no, this isn't in Baja. This is on the Pacific coast side of Baja, California. But this is a current fish farm, and eventually it can turn into an Eden where you have all types of systems that look at fish farming, but also the agricultural production. As you can kind of see along the edge here, they're capturing and storing fresh water along the river's edge too. I just really think this is a beautiful example of what eventually all around Laguna Salada and all around the Salton Sea can look like. Productive habitats, seawater tolerant landscapes, but also just regular ornamental landscapes in new residential, commercial, industrial communities. These same systems can be around Mexicali as well in urban context. I just really think that could be amazing use of seawater. Yeah. Do we have any other questions that want to jump in? Anybody else that have any thoughts, feel free to raise your hand. I know, Jimena, you might have some closing thoughts. We're all on the project and process. As an overview, we've met with Conagua. We're having follow-up meetings with them again. We met with one of the representatives of SILA, and we're starting the conversation with Sermanal. Let me bring up really quick the two links that Mr. Salcedo brought forward, because I think those are important here. The other link that we have is so NAB Bank, and then let me just bring that up here. Stop share. And then bring up your link here so everybody can see this, and then we can go visit that on our own time. But really important when we're looking at the ability to collaborate with different government agencies. Again, you know, this is open to every company or other competitive groups, but this is an organization that works on both sides of the border. So these links are really beneficial. Different funding opportunities and different ways that this project could be beneficial and be funded. And then looking to the state for support with permitting, state of California and the state of Baja. I appreciate you sharing those, Mr. Salcedo. Yeah, we'll open up a few other questions, comments, and then we can kind of get into the closing phase if we have any other conversation pieces that anybody has. And then I would like to talk about Ingenieria Dennis and their involvement and what the next steps are for us. I know we have a few different meetings coming up, as well as the potential. I hope have this be a review committee, as mentioned. We met with the Sonoran Institute several times. We hope that they are very much involved. We would turn over and have third-party review of a project like this to an outside agency such as them. But go ahead, Jimena, if you like.
No más para resumir, en Ingeniería Dennis estamos trabajando para poder realizar el proyecto y crear un canal en donde se... Oh, sorry. Yes. A crear un canal en donde se pueda realizar el proyecto de manera adecuada junto con el canal de retorno, que es un gran reto para ingenierilmente hablando. Estamos ahorita en trámites y en pláticas con diferentes agencias, tanto gubernamentales como agencias que se dedican a hacer restauración ambiental en la zona para obtener pues también su participación, sus comentarios y poder realizar un proyecto realmente integral en donde se tomen en cuenta todas las consideraciones y poder minimizar lo máximo posible los impactos negativos del proyecto e incrementar los impactos positivos del mismo.
Muchas gracias. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and so we had a question here that says, there is a saying about boiling mud at the very bottom of Laguna Salada, or part of the Coyote Canal. So yeah, thank you, Jose. So is very active, activity, geothermal activity, and just activity in general in the region. The geothermal facilities on the other side of Eagle Mountain, and also in the Salton Sea, there's a lot of activity on that regard. Rob, do you have any thoughts about that question specifically?
Yeah, at the current deep spot of Laguna Salada, the very far eastern lobe of the main body, that's the lowest elevation location. Basically, you have the Laguna Salada fault, a detachment fault, and then a step over fault, and then the Cañada David, which goes down closer towards, the very southern end of the Cucapah Mountains. But both of these are what are called detachment faults. But the area you're talking about where you're going to have some geothermal activity is in that spreading zone, the transfer between the two relatively parallel faults. And, yes, there are a number of locations where it looks like there is geothermal activity down below it. In fact, if you, use the satellite imagery and look through time and all over the, especially down kind of just north of Fish Camp Road, you'll see a bunch of just like what look like freckles. And in talking with a geologist that lives here locally, but has done studies down there, those freckles are either geothermal plumes from what would be the equivalent of a black smoker at the bottom of the ocean, but sitting below 2,000 meters of sand. It's either that or the results of liquefaction events, where that's the channel that the water from down beneath the earth comes streaming up towards the top. But generally those freckles tend to appear at places where the Earth's crust is thinning, in between things like the Laguna Salada fault and the Cañada David fault. It's those spreading zones where you see the biggest number of those. So yes, the consensus is that what you're seeing there is boiling mud.
Well, and I guess the question might be, is there an adverse impact too? Most of that activity wouldn't have a negative impact unless there's a high geological event. Obviously that has, issues like we saw in Tonga, tragically, right? There's certain things that are outside of expectations. There is high activity that's projected for all of the United States, especially northern United States, Yellowstone and there's areas.
Like black smokers down at the bottom of the ocean, they're going to provide nutrients for the food chain. Yes, we're going to have sufficient currents through places like Laguna Salada and everywhere we're looking at to, we don't want, nutrients are a good thing. Too much nutrients can be a bad thing, as we found out in the Salton Sea. Too much algal blooms, anoxic conditions, all bad. The limited amount, if we were to go there and actually drill, possibly there's some geothermal energy that we can use down there. Yeah, it would likely be marginal. It's not going to be as good as the Sierra Prieta geothermal or the Salton Sea geothermal. I mean, the good places have probably already been taken. There might be some additional stuff we can do on the side to take advantage of mud volcanoes. But it's not going to have an adverse impact on ecosystems that we try and develop, is kind of what I'm saying.
Nathan or Rob, why is the state or the federal government not trying aeration in the Salton Sea? I mean, it's set up for aeration. I mean, it would certainly help everything if they would aerate the Salton Sea. I'm just wondering why they haven't tried it. Do they think it's too much salinity to try it?
That's a good question. I mean, it's multifaceted, right? There's not any easy answers. So when I first started Agess, we had the concept of extracting algae, physically removing algae blooms and seeing if there's any beneficial byproducts of them, bioplastics, whatever might come of it. And, you know, we went to the Salton Sea Authority and made that presentation, and there's not really a conduit for having action. That's what it took me many years of going to the Salton Sea Authority and saying, hey, this is an idea, this is what could be done, to see that there wasn't a process for implementation. We were in 12th place, or I'm sorry, 6th place in 2012 of submitting a project for the seawater farming at the Salton Sea. 6th place was outside of the funding bracket. The other projects that did get funded were the Torres Martinez wetlands, the species conservation habitat, and the Red Hill Bay projects. Those projects still haven't been completed. Us and our team, we would have been under construction right away. But hindsight is that it's very hard to implement projects, especially ones that may be as simple as aeration. Try and remove the occurrence. A big partnership that we have is Floating Islands West, to have floating islands remove the nutrients naturally. Then you could actually harvest some of the products and make a profit on those. It's just a matter of the mechanisms for getting things implemented is quite difficult. The state isn't able to actively do that themselves. You know, they're looking for outside agencies.
And one other possible reason why specifically California isn't doing it, California, you know, if we're talking about aerating the water, that's usually a mechanical process where either, you know, you make some sort of a fountain or some sort of a means to increase surface area and at water surface area interactions with air. That also increases evaporation substantially. And really, they're just trying to, you know, they're trying to eliminate evapotranspiration from crops. Any sort, you know, they want to reduce inputs into the Salton Sea to 800,000 acre feet a year, to take evaporation down from 1.3 million acre feet a year down to 800,000. So that might be one of the reasons why California does not want to try aeration, because of the actual Salton Sea waters. Specifically because the difficulties in doing that are a mechanical thing, and it does tend to increase evaporation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you also have the salt accumulation that builds up on a mechanical system. All of the system gets clogged unless you have a more expensive one. Having a floating solar panel, all of those different things adds to the complexity. But no, I agree. That's where we need to start, is the nutrients. And our comprehensive strategy looks at addressing, as was mentioned previously, we can address some of the nutrients in the actual Tres Lagunas within Mexicali. We can address that within the Alamo and the New River, all the way during and to the Salton Sea, as well as in the area that it enters the Salton Sea. That is all lower salinity habitat that we can use systems to extract selenium and make a profit with partners like Intrinsic Bio and the PPCU, all those different companies. We can sell surplus selenium to places like China that are depleted in selenium. Does that answer your question, Gil?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And also I wanted to talk and highlight, Andrea, if you're still here, you know, I only talked briefly about your systems, but, you know, I showed the example of tire field or plastic in the ocean. And how does this project really benefit from incorporating a system like that? You know, we've looked at Mesquite landfill. We've also looked at industrial centers within Salton City, but also here in Mexicali. How can we implement some technology to address our plastic waste pollution problem and have it benefit this effort? Maybe if Andrea's still here. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I'm here. I was muted. Sorry, I was talking. So we've been looking at blue economy development around securing secure supply sources of energy, both as in fuels for things like construction and for operations, as well as direct to energy grid. And we have ensured technology that's industrialized and finishing their ISO 9000 systems that are stackable units that do 5 tons per day of conversion and create 1,000 gallons of no sulfur diesel fuel that's certified for roadworthiness and marine operations. So these units can be stacked and placed into really beautiful architecture structures that are off-grid and supplied through energy, both through renewable energies developed through the units as well as for solar infrastructure. And what it does is provides low-cost fuels for development operations and long-term energy security in some of these remote regions that can be used for business operations, tourism, fuel supplies for other industrialized operations. But they are a good, secure way to provide clean energy through things that most people think are not a resource, which is our trash. So it's a great way to take something that we usually pay to get rid of and create a really high value resource with it.
Perfect. Yeah, that really helps answer the question. Our hope is that there's plastic credits out there too that can help the finances of development like this. And
so
again,
I will peek onto the credits for a little bit. So we have been in development of open market carbon offset credits that are associated with this process, which include things like diversion from landfill. And those can supply substantial amount of additional revenue resources for these projects. So when you get up to a project that starts 5 tons a day and moves up to 50 tons per day of conversion, you can generate almost an additional $9 to $10 million worth of offset sales with that single project. So there is a lot of revenue that can be generated with greenhouse gas reduction projects such as this, as well as the open plastic offset market, which isn't quite standardized yet, but is slowly coming up as the young sister to the open carbon marketplace.
No, that's great. Yeah. And that fits very well into Mr. Salcedo's information on NatBank. A waste plastic conversion or a tire conversion facility could be an independent project. It could be tied in some degree, but how many jobs get created from one facility? I mean, maybe you can talk about that from like a 5-ton facility. What are the economics and the employment opportunities?
So we predict that we're going to, for each 5 tons per day of conversion, 10 to 12 jobs, very well paid jobs per 5 tons of conversion. So as you get up to 50 tons per day, you're starting to generate hundreds of well-paid jobs and associated jobs with the facility and the industry. And then those opportunities also open up additional opportunities for other revenue generators and economic development builds. So we've been working with ports all over the world, developing fee programs, looking at shipments coming into those transport facilities that add additional monies that go into blue economy development programs. And those are things that we can develop in the future, but those facilities on their own generate a lot of economic resources and generate a lot of finance and money for the region. But there's also additional places that we can do economic development for regions, and every region is different. You know, we're not going to go in and tell the stakeholders how to do things. We go in and work with the stakeholders and determine what are the needs for the community in that region.
No, that's great. Yeah, and that'll kind of be a good transition to what I wanted to say is I put in the chat here an event that the nonprofit group that I was one of the co-founders of is having in a couple weeks. They're actually out there building right now. I'll put that on the screen as well if anybody's interested. This is an event that they're actually having at one of the pyramids down south. So, you know, I hope anybody that's interested can attend. I know it's a difficult thing. They're trying to build it right now. But what Andrea is mentioning is that our hope with NACTI, our Native American Church of Turtle Island, or this project is that you incentivize pickup partners, right? You incentivize people that are in the community that can go clean up their community and they can make a viable living doing that. So, you know, I hope anybody that's interested might want to attend this event. You know, hopefully entertainment is a catalyst, but the real opportunity is to create good paying jobs that are equal or more lucrative than current job.
And I'll say one more thing about that. So we have been in early stages of developing an ANSI accredited job development training program for waste to energy that can be applied throughout the industry. And we're working with Green Advantage, which is one of the top groups that develops these types of certifications for the green building industry. So these are things that we're thinking about. How do we target and bring in and cultivate long-term jobs for areas where there's low economic inputs going into the region? How do we increase diversity among our workforce? How do we target multiple kinds of backgrounds and groups so that we can have a good, well-paid job force that have long-term, well-paid jobs? And there's a lot of thought that goes into this ANSI certification process, but I'm very excited about it. And it's really a great way to help build those kinds of longstanding ties within the community.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Andrea. And I also put in the chats here, and I could share this real quickly. You know, we had a very successful event that was last year, and it was a virtual summit that we really talked about the project as a whole, but also all the individual systems. So you can visit that, and I can put that in the chat as well. You know, all the individual technologies and collaborative partners that have pieces of the puzzle. Andrea was included in that, and many other groups were included in the 3-day event. And I'm inviting everybody to participate in that if you'd like. We hope to have it be maybe more focused on the event and entertainment this year too, in addition to the education components, in addition to the collaboration efforts. So that's going to be March 17th to the 19th. And more information is to come on that, but that'll be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of March. And we're hoping to bring everybody together. So if you're a person, an individual, a musician, or a technology advisor, or somebody else that wants to participate, sign a letter of support or be involved in some way, we invite you to participate in that. And that's really exciting. Rob has one final issue, and then we'll do the wrap up with the different groups that are here, and we'll give our closing thoughts. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, to kind of complement what Andrea is saying, one way of, let's say, utilizing this diesel fuel, we're going to need to go ahead and buy a bunch of these dredges that can be delivered on the back of a truck, 2-man people, air-conditioned cabs. You know, you're looking at $15, $20 an hour sort of jobs for that crew. But see, once you're done building this, you know, all those farms that you're looking at on the shorelines, these dredges become the tractor, become the horse and plow for all this sort of stuff. So they're going to have ongoing jobs, creating green jobs, places for fish farms, for shrimp farms, for any type of these sort of biofuel farms, or even just plain salt marshes that sequester vast amounts of CO2. So you start to see a supply side and a consumption side of the same thing, keeping money within a local economy and building that economy such that, you know, essentially more people can live there. But that's how some of these synergies can work.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rob. I appreciate all your input on that. So let's go around real quick too. I'll just kind of call on a few people if that's okay. And I know Mr. Salcedo, if you have any closing thoughts, any remarks, or Mr. Guadalajara Acuna, maybe you guys can kind of help us close this meeting today, but also open the discussion. Our hope is that this is an impetus for the next meeting. So maybe if you have any thoughts, Mr. Acuna, in closing, or Mr. Salcedo, please feel free. And from my side, while we're waiting on that, I wanted to show something. So for me, the hope is that this is a project that not only is beneficial to several areas, it's beneficial as a template for doing things around the world. And I kind of mentioned that, and I'm not trying to be trite or anything. I'm trying to be a realist in that it's a very difficult thing to implement projects that will actually be able to be utilized in other places. I think this collaboration opportunity is very interesting and unique because as we deploy it, as we look at this region, we can look at it as a template for other places around the world. So I just wanted to quickly share some of the other efforts that we've been working on and share how that might have positive impact and just kind of leave that with a hopeful message while we're waiting on other people to kind of discuss. So let me share this real quick. So as you can see, there's a lot of opportunities within each of the regions. This is on our website. It's kind of a fun interactive map. Need to add more information as we move forward, but you can click on different pins and see different information about the project. But the hope is that we're not just talking about this region. Our overall goal is that this is a template for abilities to restore this region, right? We're looking at all of this region and all of this region here. Once we are successful, and I say we as all of us, we can take this to other places around the world and have it be a template for deployment in other areas. We've been focusing heavily in the area of the Denikill Depression. We really hope that this project has a benefit for not only the people that are locally in this community, but when we all work together, we can take it to other places. So I just want to thank everybody. I want to ask for your help. And I know that's a hard thing to do, but I definitely need everybody's help on this project. The 10 people that spoke today aren't able to do it alone. And we want to collaborate with as many people as possible. And we're open to sharing as much information. If anybody has any needs, I'll put my information in the chat and you can always send me an email or give me a call. I want to thank everybody for participating today too. It was really helpful. And again, this is just a launching platform for the next step to collaborate with the community. So I greatly appreciate everybody's time. Anybody else that has any closing, Jimena, if you'd like to say anything, then we're open. Otherwise, we can close it out for the day. Jimena?
No, I think I said everything I needed to. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jimena. Thank you, Mr. Acuna. Thank you, everybody. Thank you again, Mr. Beltran from the Cucapah community for joining as well. We have Jose, I think, that maybe would like to say something too.
I just want to say thank you for inviting us.
Mm-hmm.
We'll try to help as much as possible, even with documentation and whatever local at the Laguna Salada. Maybe talking to the local ejidos or ejidatarios that I know from Manatú, Guardianes de la Patria, and the other ejido that is nearby. There are like 4 or 5 that they're pretty old, but they are not in the meeting, and this is very important for them. So I will send a message to them.
Yep. Yeah, and hopefully you can share this presentation. I'll share it I'll have it on YouTube, or I can post it there, and then we could get a link to share with the community. I put my email and my phone number in the chat there, and I'm accessible on WhatsApp. Yeah, what you mentioned is really important, and that's been a conversation or a question that we've had before is, how would this benefit the community? And I want to ask the community, what do you need? My background is in architecture and real estate development. I would love to build rammed earth houses and hay bale houses and shipping containers and modular units. That's my goal, is to build housing and commercial and industrial, like Andrea's project. What does the community need though? So thank you so much. And then I think there's a few other questions here. Mr. Bernardo Salcedo, would you like to say something?
Yes. Sí, bueno, veo que el proyecto tiene un gran avance desde la última vez que fue la presentación. Y con relación a su presentación en el seno de la COSEF Finance Bank, ellos manejan una guía para la presentación y certificación de proyectos. En esa guía, pues, marca todo el contenido que piden para que ese proyecto se analice y se certifique. Ellos, entre otras cosas, piden que el proyecto cumpla con todas las regulaciones, las leyes, reglamentos y normas aplicables en materia ambiental, en materia de desarrollo urbano, de uso del suelo, etcétera, todo lo de planeación, tanto en la parte de Estados Unidos como en la parte de México. Eso lo revisan. Mucho trabajo de lo que pide la COSEF para la presentación y certificación de los proyectos binacionales, transfronterizos. Ya hay un gran avance en ellos. Simplemente es, bueno, aprovechar esta plataforma, este foro, precisamente que es esta instancia que es la Comisión de Cooperación Ecológica Binacional Fronteriza, que fue creada precisamente para eso, para impulsar y apoyar ese tipo de proyectos. Y la guía pues marca bastante detalle, pues todo lo que ellos piden tanto para analizar, validar y certificar el proyecto. Y eso creo que traería un gran beneficio a este proyecto y al logro de los objetivos en ambos lados de la frontera.
So just a quick summary, he said that he has seen great improvements in the project since the last presentation he attended. And he also said that there's a guide that this organization with NatBank has on how to present the project so they can certify them and review them. No sé si nos puedas mandar la guía por correo.
Sí, como no, la página de la COSEF, ahí se encuentra, con todo gusto les mando la liga y la guía.
Okay, and he said he will send us the link that contains the information for the guide with the requirements to make a presentation with the COSEF, this binational organization for environmental projects.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Salcedo. And I appreciate your willingness to participate and assist and kind of drive the discussion as well too. That introduction is very helpful, as well as the ability to participate in that way, because that's what we need. And as Jose mentioned too, is like the introduction to the different ejidos, the introduction with the Cucapah, all of those people come together, and those are the applicants, those are the owners. Jimena, myself, we're just trying to help get the project done. And people like Mr. Salcedo and Mr. Acuna, we're all here to support the benefit to the community. And if that project is done, NatBank pays for that project. We can go to the state of California and we say, hey, there's water within 7 miles of the border. Let's do the next NatBank application. Let's do the application for the Salton Sea. Then let's do a third application to connect the two, right? And we could go in parts, pieces, or as one big whole, and really get it implemented quickly. But it takes everybody at the same table. And it really takes, I appreciate the introductions to the different ejido owners. I'm always happy to come down to the community and meet. And we wanna just include everybody and know what they need and make sure to include that priority, not just monetary. I know everybody needs monetary compensation, and that is predominant, but what else does the community need? And so we're always open to that. I guess today I'll give the closing address. Formality, I wanted to thank everybody for their time. I wanted to humbly say thank you for participating in this discussion. I want to thank you and just humbly ask for your help. This is something that is the very first part, the very first piece of the puzzle that actually starts to help around the world, right? When we can help communities and we can design projects that benefit the community, the economics and everything, and make them independent, that's where people and communities thrive. It breaks my heart that we still have this Remain in Mexico policy where we're having immigrants stay at the border in these conditions. My hope is that projects and communities like this will help build the border communities and will help collaborate in creating communities, and people might be more excited to stay, right? We might build a Mexico and a place within Laguna Salada that people will come from around the world, not just for immigration, but for new economic opportunities. So I just wanted to thank everybody. I hope that this can be a new community. It could be a new several different cities, and we use innovative technology as well as our most abundant resource on the planet, which is seawater, to help the land and the sea and the communities, right? When we can start valuing ocean water, we can start building communities around ocean water. And then what was a negative becomes a positive. So I want to thank everybody for their time. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to future collaborations.
Bueno.
Muchas gracias.
Jimena.
I see Mr. Conner. Would you like to say anything?
Bueno, quisiera proponer, finalmente quisiera proponer que ya formáramos de este lado el grupo de trabajo con representantes de todos los sectores que han estado participando para que ya podamos darle mayor seguimiento a todos los trámites que tengan que hacerse. Entonces, que pudiéramos agendarnos para crear un formato de registro de participantes, que poner un nombre que pueda ser un grupo promotor aquí en México, aquí en la región. Aquí en nuestra región me da gusto que esté aquí el licenciado Beltrán. Cesar Beltran es un líder muy destacado, en este caso es un actor clave. También están gentes de Ejidos de la Salada. Está propiamente una figura clave que ya participó, es el licenciado Pérez Tejada, David. Él es la representación oficial del estado, del gobierno del estado de Baja California, por la cartera que ya tiene. Entonces pudiésemos poner de acuerdo para que integremos una mesa ya, una mesa de trabajo ya formal. Esa sería mi propuesta.
He says that he would like to propose to finally create a work group that tackles this project on our side of the border, to create a list of all of the representatives and people that we've talked to and want to participate, and that we follow up this project more closely.
Okay. También quiero agregar que hay una petición del licenciado Beltrán para que Natal hablara con él. No sé si ya se pusieron de acuerdo, porque este es un tema muy sensible con la comunidad Cucapah. Tenemos que ser muy claros ahí con ellos. Y bueno, pues ese tema también es importante considerarlo.
Claro que sí, licenciado Guadalupe Acuña, le agradezco el comentario. Nathan y ya tuvimos la oportunidad de platicar para agendar ahora sí con los miembros de la comunidad la respectiva reunión. Thank you, Guadalupe Acuña. Yes, Mr. Nathan and I already talked about establishing a meeting with the board and members of the community in order to see how we are going to work or collaborate, or what is going to be our stance in this project. We already did, and we appreciate it, licenciado.
Great. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Again, thank you to everybody for taking the time out of their day. I'll make sure and share this information on the internet as well as on our website as well. And we'll just keep the communication going. Again, if you'd like to attend the event that the church is hosting, that's coming up in a week. Otherwise, the binational summit, we want to include all of the officials and maybe have a music event within Laguna Salada. Maybe we could talk about that, Jose. We might be showing up at the ranch with some music.
You're very welcome.
Well, thank you, everybody. Again, muchas gracias, and we'll be in touch very soon. I really appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Good day.